Hello, Alabama fans, and welcome to the BamaOnLine Big Show. I'm Tim Watts, BamaOnline.com publisher, and with me is Charlie Potter, our team writer extraordinaire, team analyst. He does a little bit of everything. This is the one show we do with Bama Online where you have all six of the talent on the show. Me, Charlie, Blake Byler will join us next. Jimmy Stein comes on, Andrew Bone, recruiting editor, and Joseph Hastings. So we cover a little bit of everything today. We're going to start with LSU. We're going to work our way all the way through basketball into recruiting at the end of the show. So y'all stick around. And if you're here, do us a favor. Please like and subscribe. We appreciate doing. If you appreciate the content, just give us a quick like, and you'll get notifications. And if you subscribe when our shows come on, Charlie Potter, LSU, just like you predicted, right?
Yeah, I don't think anybody necessarily saw that coming. I thought Alabama would win the game. I didn't really have much doubt about that. I thought LSU had a lot more holes than Alabama, but Alabama certainly took advantage of those. Jalen had a huge game. The defense continues to play lights out. I think the older guys are a little upset about the touchdown late. It would have been 42-6, would have been even more impressive, but still to go on the road and to win the way they did. The defense gave up some chunk plays here and there. They were able to give up some drives, but they were able to hold them out of the end zone, the starters at least. And I thought that was really impressive because Garrett Nussmeier is a hell of a quarterback. He can make some good throws. I thought they were good kind of across the board, pass rush. In coverage, they had three more forced turnovers. That's 13 in the last four games. Jalen, I think a lot of us felt like he could do a lot of the same things he did a year ago, even though this LSU defense was improved. But just a phenomenal game. I thought the offense as a whole did a really nice job, especially whenever it started raining there midway through the game. So overall, just an impressive performance, a statement win in a game that was a playoff elimination game. It was a must-win game. All you had to do was get out of Baton Rouge with a win, but Alabama did so in really impressive fashion.
Tell you, I don't think you can talk enough about the blocking. I mean, obviously the offensive line did a good job, but the running backs being the lead
Mhm.
blockers. I mean, they were selfless. If you watch Justice Haynes, and he is weaving through traffic almost like a running back finding somebody to block. You saw Jam being selfless, and how about Jam being tough? I mean, that injury, his reaction, because he's a pretty tough guy. His reaction made me think he might not be coming back in that game. But again, both the running backs deserve praise. The wide receivers, we talked about this after the show. The wide receivers did a good job blocking. Kendrick Law and even Ryan Williams, I was laughing. He was trying to get physical out there, at 160 pounds or whatever. So a lot of emotions in that game. Now, going into that, I was a little surprised Saturday when I saw so many people pick against Alabama simply because you saw kind of hey, here's the recipe how to beat LSU comfortably. Marcel Reed did it. Well, you got Jalen Milrose, Marcel Reed, on steroids. He's a ripped, he's a big, he's 50 pounds heavier than Marcel Reed and just as fast. And it looks like, Nick Sheridan just followed that game plan to a T.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little surprising of how many people were picking Alabama. I think you kind of buy into night game in Tiger Stadium, and it's intimidating. But I think Alabama is one of maybe a handful of programs. They might be the only one, to be honest, that isn't afraid of that venue. And I know it's the first time Kalen DeBoer has gone into Baton Rouge, but a lot of these guys that are returning have been there. They've experienced that. I think guys like Malachi Moore and others aren't afraid of that necessarily. And so I think that helps. You don't have that intimidation factor going into it, but you're right. I mean, the blueprint was there for Alabama to succeed. I mean, the defense has played well of late. They've played better and better since that Vanderbilt game. But for Jalen, he did it last year. Again, this defense is a little better than it was a year ago, this LSU defense. But to be able to rush for more, I think is really impressive. And you're right. I mean, I think they saw some things that they knew that they could take advantage of, and they certainly did. And I think it does. I think a lot of guys deserve credit because Jalen's going to get the focal point of, or be the focal point of this performance. But Tyler Booker, Parker Brailsford were just blocking their asses off. You had the running backs, like you said, they were unselfish and basically serving as fullbacks in some of those runs to spring those big gains by Jalen and the receivers and tight ends as well. So it was an overall really strong performance. But I think that some of us thought that Jalen could do that. I don't know if we expected him to get nearly 200 yards on the ground, though.
It was so easy. The way he ran, how strong he was, how patient he was. Go back to that play where he ran, kind of scrambled, ended up going to the right, and just ran straight out of bounds. You know what I mean? Instead of taking a hit and avoiding that. Also, I think the coaches, we got to give them a little bit of praise because that whole Bama's quiet, Bama's soft, Bama's coaches don't yell and scream. I've never bought into that. I just thought they didn't publicly scream. And, some things are better left said behind, closed doors. Kirby Smart's catching some heat for calling Jake Pope an idiot. And I think we're all kind of thinking that, but you kind of just don't sling it out there. But we saw Kalen DeBoer pretty fired up on the sideline a few times. And Nick Sheridan, to start that drive, I don't know if you've seen the video, he was very excited about that first touchdown drive in the booth.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a fiery coaching staff. It's just not Nick Saban fiery. I don't know that many people are. You have maybe Will Muschamp and a few others, but yeah, everybody's not the same. And yeah, I mean, I know this is off topic, but the fact that Kirby Smart called one player an idiot when he had so many guys get in trouble
Yeah,
off the field is a little wild. But going back to
it's off topic.
yeah, uh, going back to Kalen, I mean, I know that he is portrayed and he conveys it himself. He's this laid back, kind of even keeled personality. But that's the thing, the people closest to him will tell you, like the misconception about him is that he isn't passionate and he doesn't have a fire, because he certainly does. He's a competitive dude. And boy, he got after Jay Nunez a little bit, the special teams coordinator in that game. You saw some of that. You saw his reactions to some things. We've seen it at times during the season. The Georgia game was one of them, but he's not Nick Saban. No one is. But also, there's not many people that are having those tirades on the sideline and getting after officials and even players like Nick Saban did either. So it's a passionate group, and I think that the performance and the way that they prepared, that's one thing I know that people probably get tired of hearing, is how well they're doing in practice, how well the guys are looking, the way they're locked in and stuff. But I think it really was a good 2 weeks of preparation. I think the coaches felt that. I think they were ready for this one, and it showed with the way that they kind of reacted and celebrated on Saturday.
Yeah. I think, who I think had a deceptively good game, but it was down for him was Ryan Williams. We're so used to his big games being what he is, but being what they are. But he had a nice play on the sideline when Jalen scrambled and found him. And that punt return was huge. That getting them up there midfield, flipping the field, nice and easy. And again, giving up the blocks. Real quick before we bring Blake in, we're going to go a little bit deeper. We got to talk about Jihad, because if you're talking about Jalen, the defensive Jalen was Jihad, right?
Yeah, I mean, he played lights out, and he's looking like he did earlier in the season. The Vanderbilt game, everybody was kind of on their heels a little bit, and again, the defense has just been kind of trending upward ever since. But yeah, Jihad was all over the field, double-digit tackles, 1.5 sacks. He had the breakup on that first offensive drive, which I think, to me, I've said it multiple times. I even asked Kalen about it after the game. That you give up the long kickoff, you have the 45-yard run, but then Damani Jackson makes that tackle at the 5.
Jeez, a lot
A
of heart.
huge play, huge play.
Yeah.
That's a play that they're going to show on tape repeatedly moving forward, just because the effort and what it meant, because then Alabama gets to stop. And Jihad Campbell's right there, kind of almost as a Husky, the way he is on the field. And he's lined up again, or he ends up drawing Kyron Lacey right there at the goal line and gets a key pass breakup to force the field goal. He has the strip sack. He's all over the field, and I think Jihad's going to be he's going to be important moving forward with the injury to Q Robinson, which just really sucks because Q's such a good dude and has
Works
waited his turn.
waited
But
his
like
turn. That sucks.
now you can see, maybe, you're still going to see Jihad plenty off the ball back there with Deontay Lawson, but on third down, maybe Jihad goes down to that wolf position, and then you have Justin Jefferson, who's played well this season. So not only has he been all over the field, or was he all over the field on Saturday, he could literally be all over the field moving forward, because you can move him around and have him playing different roles now with QL.
So LSU's behind us. You're kind of where you're at. We went into the season. LSU was a big game. Tennessee, Georgia. At Oklahoma, I still think that's a game you definitely want to be focused on. I was kind of irritated it's at night. I know you were. Those night games run us till midnight easy. You and Blake later than that. But kind of where you're almost, if you're not shocked to be where you're at right now, I don't think, with 2 losses, and you're in that game by game mentality, right? Even Mercer, I think you have to focus and do small things and get players, inexperienced players you might need down the stretch, because there's still potentially a ton of football left, a ton of it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Mercer's a good FCS team. Alabama should be able to beat them pretty soundly. Sanford scored 55 on this Mercer team. So I think it is a week where, yeah, you want to be able to get some young guys in the game. We'll see if they execute and do the things they need to do to get to that point. Um, but yeah, moving forward, I think it's good that the Oklahoma game is not this week, just because you don't want that letdown right after a huge performance against LSU. But I think to close the season, you have 3 winnable games. If Alabama plays this game, it should win those games by double-digit points. But you got to have guys locked in, ready to go. And I think they will. I think the leadership has been really big for this team down the stretch. I think Tyler Booker has been really big from that standpoint. It's not to say that guys like Jalen and Malachi, Deontay, and others haven't been, but I think Tyler Booker's really raised his level of leadership and just holding guys accountable to a different level here of late. And I think that's why you probably won't see Alabama slip up here before the regular season ends, and we'll see what happens. They could get a trip to Atlanta, and I know some people are wondering, what does that mean? Do we want that? You don't. What happens if they lose and they're out of the playoff? What's to say Alabama doesn't go to Atlanta and kick whoever is in front of them's ass and get to the first round bye? I mean, it could happen. This team, if they play like they did on Saturday, they can beat anybody in the country, and it's
Yeah,
just
and
going to be important for them to continue to do that.
I think this staff and the players, especially, there was a time where people were questioning if they cared. I'm gonna go ahead and say, any of you sideline interpreters, you stink. Whether I'm smiling or whether I'm crying, no matter the reaction on it, there's not a really good reaction for a player on the sideline when they're losing. You know what I mean? If somebody says, "Hey, keep your head up," and you smile at them and they catch that, they're ripping into Carson Beck's taking a beating. And I don't know the circumstances. You know what I mean? Some maybe don't care, but I think the majority of these players care. And I think you have to remember how much effort goes into being on these teams. You got to care to go through it. Let's bring in Blake Byler. Can't wait to see his hairstyle this morning. Blake,
What's up?
you got a haircut, didn't you?
Like a week ago.
Well, I haven't seen you in a week, Blake. That's brand
true.
new.
That's
That's
true.
brand
That's a good point.
that's brand new to me, baby. How you doing, Blake? How was your trip? I want to know how your trip to Baton Rouge was as just a person and a media and person. Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I loved it. I think I was telling Charlie this while we were there. I think Tiger Stadium might be my favorite SEC stadium outside of Bryant Denny. Just because I think the stadium's really nice, but I love the atmosphere that they create. They have great fans down there. Obviously, Alabama took the crowd out of it by the fourth quarter, but at the start of the game, that place was as loud as anywhere I've ever been. Like, they were into it. And on top of that, we had an open air press box, and I love open air press boxes because you actually get to kind of feel the environment of the stadium and kind of get the whole atmosphere and be able to take it in more so than some of these places like Tennessee, where it's fully closed in and you can't really hear the crowd. It's all muffled. So just everything from there was clear signs on how to get to the press box and like little things like that don't matter to people, but for us, it makes our job easier. It's easy to get down to the field. So just overall, I really enjoyed Tiger Stadium. It was a good trip, and I really enjoyed it.
It's got an old school feel to it. Our good friend Shay Dixon, who runs our LSU site, is a buddy of mine, and my second son went and camped at LSU for baseball, and his wife works at LSU. They got us a tour of that stadium when it's empty, and I don't know if tour is the right word. It's not Fenway, but we got to walk around with nobody there, and it's a fun place. You can feel that old school electricity there. Charlie, they treated you well. The media treated you well up there.
Yeah, I'll say this. We had some trouble getting to Knoxville. Traffic was bad. It was just we got there kind of later than I would like to. I try to be on top of things, and that wasn't the case. So Blake and I left super early. We were in our seats at the press box 4 hours before kickoff. So I was like, we're not screwing this up. But yeah, I mean, they were great. They let us in early. Food wasn't great. That's probably the only knock on the game on Saturday, but everything else was really good. We had good seats. It's easy to get around, and like Blake said, like getting down to the field was easy, but that wasn't the case 2 years ago. It was because there were a lot of people already gone, so that was certainly beneficial. But no, the Tiger Stadium is special. I love all the songs they play. Calling Baton Rouge when that starts blaring, that's awesome. But yeah, it's a lot of fun to go to. I wish It was fun to cover the basketball game on Friday night, but it'd been nice. I know you're in the same boat as us, Tim, to be able to go to New Orleans on Friday night before, but you got to kind of take what you can get, and I think it was a successful trip to say the least.
What are y'all's thoughts on this Oklahoma game being a night game? Have you two thought about that from a team standpoint and a coverage standpoint? Were y'all expecting it to be a night game?
We talked about that on the drive back because we were looking at the schedule, and honestly, just these next 2 weeks, it's not a great slate. So with Alabama now being Alabama, I guess in some people's eyes, you kind of figured the night game was coming. There's just not a lot of great matchups before rivalry weekend to end the regular season. So it wasn't a huge surprise. You don't necessarily want that being on the road. I think that 2:30 kick would have been pretty sweet, like a sweet spot for us going out there. But you'll go into Norman for the first time experiencing that. That should be a lot of fun at night too. I don't know really what to expect from that standpoint. It'll be my first time there, and it'll be the last SEC stadium to knock off the list for me. But it's a situation where we expected it. It's probably going to mean another late night, but I mean that's kind of been the case with these ABC kicks.
Yeah. So let's get to basketball. Blake, a little bit of drama the last two games. We knew, and I think we've all talked about like basketball tricky because you think, I got a friend that literally says they can't be good. It's like when Alabama lost to UConn 2 years ago. He said, how good can they be with that football team they have? And I'm like, they're not really the same thing, right? Football, basketball, like Georgetown used to be good. I don't even know if they play football, St. John's and all of that. But two pretty competitive athletic teams. Let's start with Arkansas State and hit on that. Then we'll work our way to McNeese, who was last night.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas State's a good team, first and foremost. Like, they're picked as the favorites to win the Sun Belt. And coming out of that game Friday, there was no doubt in my mind that that's going to be one of the better mid-major teams in all of college basketball. Brian Hodgson has gotten them rolling, a former Alabama assistant. They lost 20 games the year before he got there, and then he got there last year, and they won 20 games. And now they look like a shoe-in to win their conference and make the NCAA tournament. I mean, they've got athletic players. They've got high major transfers. Like, they've got talent. Now, that's not necessarily an excuse for how Alabama played. I didn't think Alabama played a great game. I think a lot of that is due to the fact that Hodgson knows Nate Oats and he knows the system. They run the exact same system. So they're going to be ready for what Alabama has coming. And they were. They played well. I think what has been encouraging over these last two games has been the defense. Because the offense has had its struggles, but the one big question we had going into this season was whether the defense would be improved compared to last year. We know last year they were like 111th in defensive efficiency. But you've seen this group with all of the different bodies and the versatile defenders that they have be able to have success against all three of these teams to open the season. They have good rim protection with Cliff Amore and Aiden Sherrill. They've got guys who are kind of lengthy, can play out on the wing. You can play Grant Nelson out there a little bit defensively. Darion Reed, Jaron Stevenson all have good length, and that's disruptive. And then I've been impressed with how the guards have played on ball, just kind of man up. I think LeBaron Philon's super active. Mark Sears has taken a massive step forward on the defensive end, and you can just see it in his effort. Like, it's not anything different really about how he plays or anything different about him physically. He's just giving more effort on the defensive end, and that's huge, and the team feeds off of that. But as far as the offense goes, I think it's hard to – you look back at some of these Nate Oats teams, and typically we forget this because they end up scoring 110 times a year, and you think they were like that from the beginning. But a lot of these Nate Oats teams have taken a little bit for this offense to really click. Like last year, they had the losses early to Ohio State and Clemson where they didn't look very good. And some of that was offensively, some of that was defensively. And then you had the three losses. Even the team with Brandon Miller had like a 10-point win against South Alabama earlier in the year. So you've had a lot of instances where the offense hasn't fully clicked. But I think that's a big product of not knowing what the rotation is. Nate Oats trying different guys, different lineups, a lack of gelling. If there's one thing I know, it's that Nate Oats is going to get the offense figured out. Like, he's never had a bad offensive team at Alabama. And with the amount of talent on this team, I don't expect this to be any different. Like, that's going to get figured out. It's way more encouraging to me to see that the defense has been as good as it has been. So you can build off that. You can even win some of these early games here over this next 7-game stretch in November. With their defense if they need to. Like, we've seen that, and I think they're trustworthy enough for that. So then as they get this offense figured out, you can still lean on the defense, and the offense will click eventually. When they do, they're going to be an absolutely monstrous team.
Charlie, we've seen this before, right? We've seen these Alabama teams, this is what, 7 new guys on this roster. Grant, you got to applaud Grant, he's rusty. He didn't look really rusty last night, but you remember 2 years ago, and I'm going to keep mentioning this because it was a major meltdown. Alabama played in November and lost to an unranked UConn team, and we had an entire night of the Nate ain't it. Nate's got to do this. Nate's got to do that. And it turned out it was UConn. They lost to UConn, who back-to-back titles and, top 3 in the country. So we don't really, I guess I'm saying, we really don't know how good McNeese State is right now, but they came in with a lot of things working in their favor going into this game.
They did. I mean, McNeese won 30 games last year, and Will Wade's familiar with Nate Oats. I think you can just tell by hearing from Will Wade after the game what he thinks of Alabama, and the fact that he's had a tough time getting teams like Alabama to schedule McNeese because they don't want to play them. I think McNeese is a hell of a team. They're going to win a lot of games this season. And then, to Blake's point, I thought Alabama played really well defensively, only giving up 64 points. And you're right, Tim, though, they have 8 new players. You have a couple of those guys that are redshirting, obviously, but you have a lot of new faces out there. And then with guys like Grant Nelson and Latrell Reitzel, they're still knocking off that rust. I think that's all but gone now. We saw those guys combine for 37 last night. It was a huge game for both Trelly and for Grant. I think, Grant with 22 and 8, he looked really good. He was really strong in the second half. Latrell Reitzel, 5 of 9 from 3, and kind of going back to Blake's point, just those guards and their ability to defend. I think Latrell Reitzel is one of the best, defenders as a guard on this roster. And so I think it's a team that has plenty to work on, and I think that's what Nate Oats wants at this time of the season. It's why he schedules the way he does. And I think if they had gone in and just blown out McNeese before going to Purdue this weekend, that's not productive for Nate Oats at this time of year. I think it's been the point that he can make is, look, we're predicted to win a ton of games this year. Some people have them winning the national championship, but there's plenty of things that they have to work on. They can't just show up and win these games. I think more so than anything else in the McNeese game, he was pissed off that they lost the blue collar battle. I don't really remember that being a topic after a game that they win where they've lost that. So that's something that he can certainly pound this week in terms of points at practice. And there's plenty to clean up. I think that you can still see the upside's really high for this team. And obviously so. I think once they continue to get more and more chemistry together, this is only their 3rd game with the guys that are going to be playing all season long. I think we continue to see them get better. And again, those shots are going to fall. Like Blake said, the offense isn't going to be a problem or a consistent problem, not in and not out.
Yeah, and that rotation will shrink or match up better as we go on. We see this every year. I think, again, some fan base, some fans are Groundhog's Day. Again, I had so many people saying we didn't struggle at all last year in football games. And I was like, just missed the Iron Bowl, eh? I could go back through several games, South Florida, when we struggled against South Florida last year. Well, that's kind of the preseason thing. And again, last night, Blake, you get 11 of 34 3-pointers, but you got Jaron 0 for 5. You got Aiden 0 for 5. We don't expect that to be their normal shooting percentage. They look a little rushed to me. And I think part of this, and I want both of your opinions on this, when you're limited a little bit for the guards, when it's your turn, you got to get yours, right? So I wonder if there's a little bit of pressing before you get off the court. You're almost looking at the clock. I got 2 minutes left. Pressing a little bit, Blake?
Yeah, psychologically, that wouldn't shock me. I think that's kind of a natural instinct for a lot of these guys because a lot of them are entering a situation where they're all playing less than they're used to playing. They're all on a team with more guys around them than they're used to playing with, more good players around them. I think the way that you think, not in practice, it's good because there you have the competition and you're playing against each other, but it's 5-on-5 for the whole practice. But once you get into a game, you're looking over your shoulder. If you're Mark Sears or Latrell Reitzel or whoever, maybe not Mark Sears, he's not worried about this.
Yeah.
But anybody else, you're looking over your shoulder and you've got LeBaron Philon and Aiden Holloway sitting there at the scores table. And so you've got to worry about getting your shot off. And I think that is another thing that will come with the gelling. It comes with these guys playing together. Nate Oats brought this point up in the post game that not only are these a bunch of new players playing in a new system and playing together, but there are so many guys that missed portions of off-season practice in the preseason. So they really haven't shared the court together at all. I mean, you think about Grant Nelson and Latrell Wrightsell missed basically all like the last month before the season started. And then you go back even further, Jaron Stevenson missed a ton of the offseason. Darion Reed missed a good bit of the offseason, and he even spent some of the offseason playing with Team USA. Like there's so many guys that haven't all played together at the same time. And so I think there is some of that, like you said, Tim, and I think all of that's going to get worked out with the more games these guys play and the more basketball they play together.
I see a lot of reactions based on just without watching the other team and the rankings, but like last night, there was a lot of Purdue's going to kill us if we play like this. And I'm watching Purdue. They're struggling against Yale, who lost to UIC, which I had to figure out who they were. And also, Will Wade's team beat a team. I have no clue if that's a real college or not. They're one that I'm like, dude, y'all got to come up with initials for that. That's a lot of letters, but. I think going into Purdue, I think Bama will know who Purdue is, right? And I think the energy will be a little bit different. Not that they don't try hard in other games, but they'll be excited for this national stage finally.
Yeah, I think going on the road might be helpful for this team because you kind of have a backs against the wall, or maybe not that, but like us against the world mentality.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're right, though. College of Biblical Studies sounds made up.
That is not real. Sounds like my degree.
Yeah. But I do think, though, like we were talking about, Mark Sears isn't going to come off the floor. I think he played 35 minutes last night. Nate is very strategic when he pulls him out and puts him back in. And you can even tell, like, I think somebody had turnover last night. I don't remember who it was. And Mark was like standing up ready to go back in the game. And he had only been on the bench for a couple seconds. So he's a guy that's going to play a ton. But I think they'll figure it out. I think Latrell Wrightsell is also going to play a ton. I think he played 30-plus minutes last night, too, if I'm not mistaken. So I think, though, going on the road can be beneficial for this team. I think that playing these mid-major teams that are really good, it might not draw maybe the fire out of the players as much, but going on the road against a power opponent in Purdue, I think that can get a lot of players' attention, and I would expect Alabama to play well. Again, the offense isn't going to be what it's been the last couple of games. It's good. They're going to have shots fall. They're going to have guys to have big nights, but if the defense travels, I think they'll be all right.
Well, Blake and Charlie, we appreciate this effort this last week. I know y'all were busy. Try to take a breath and get a little bit of space this week. But again, you can find Charlie and Blake at BamaOnLine.com. They're there with stories every day. They do a terrific job. They're there late at night. That's why they don't do our post-game show. They're actually doing the interviews and everything for the website. But you can find them there on the BOL Roundtable. And guys, we appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.
See you, Tim.
See you.
I'm just pausing to look at the beauty I brought into the room.
It is stunning.
Finally have somebody that looks good.
This is why, just like when I was in Italy and saw David, I was like, Paul, it just took my breath away.
Third time I've heard that today.
Andrew Bone and Jimmy Stein, welcome to the show. Quite a weekend. We did Andrew, clean your camera before we get on air, if you don't mind. That's a little awkward. I'm just glad you didn't take your shirt off to do it, but we're good. We did a show, the post-game show. We had some LSU thoughts, a little bit. We'll touch on that briefly here. We'll move on to college football. But again, I mean, when I rewatched that game, there were so many little things these teams did, and I think I'm happy that Damani's getting the attention he deserves for running that play down. And it kind of exudes what this team has to be, Jimmy. It has to be that blue collar, work hard, grind, and fight every play.
Sure. And they have. I look at LSU like it's a game coupled with Missouri. That's two good performances in a row. It's not just LSU. They played well against a good Missouri team, shutting them out. Now you've got back-to-back games. And it takes a blue-collar attitude, like you're talking about, to shut SEC teams out. And I know it won't count as a shutout because LSU scored 13 points. But, hey, the touchdown was against the Twos with seconds left in the game. Other than that, the first team held them to 2 field goals, which is unbelievable. That's a good offense with good receivers and a quality quarterback. And I think the defense is just playing great. The offense is playing well, really well at some things, not all things. And I know we can nitpick the offense, and I'm happy to do that because that's just part of the job, right? So we can nitpick, But the fact of the matter is, guys, only 13 teams in all of college football have scored more points than Alabama has. So any criticism we have of the offense is literally nitpicking.
Yeah, I feel that way. Like in the whole game, if I had to nitpick two plays, it was the long run. It looked like I looked like we're lined up wrong. That Damani made the play, and then I guess this is just because I want to see him score so much. Emmanuel Henderson, I thought Jalen. That's a tough pass because that's safety. I've told some people they said he missed him wide over. No, no, no. There's a safety inching over there. You can't just pass punt that bad boy over there. You'll get it picked. So it was a thin line, but I think we all root for Henderson, Andrew. But give us a couple of game thoughts on a guy that stood out to you, or just some thoughts before we move into the playoffs and other stuff.
Well, it's not just the just one player. I think the overall defense. I mean, that they were just outstanding throughout the night. And I got a little nervous at first when Alabama was able to drive down and score on that opening possession, and then we saw the long return and then the long run.
Yeah.
But one thing about Alabama's defense is that what we've seen all season long is they bend, but they don't break. And a clear picture of that is you look at the scoring defense for Alabama. They're top 5 in scoring defense in the country. Now they're top, I think, in the top 40 as far as total defense, but being in that top 5 in scoring defense, that they've been prone to give up some big plays, but they've also been able to lock it down when those teams get into the red zone. So that's what I've been really impressed about. You brought up Damani Jackson. I thought that touchdown saving play was huge because, I mean, obviously it could have been a 7-7 game, could have changed the course. I mean, you look at Deontay Lawson, that pick he had in the end zone on the opening drive of the second half. I mean, those were two humongous plays for Alabama. But credit to I just thought the defense was lights out. We saw Kirk Herbstreit tweeted out his players of the game or teams of the week, and he noted the offense. Nick Sheridan, DeBoer, the game plan that they called. I thought it could have easily been Kane Womack and Alabama's defense because they were outstanding throughout the entire night.
Yeah, it's true. And, a lot of people said, well, they shut down a Missouri team, but they were, decimated. They weren't even decimated. They were missing a couple of key guys. No more, half the universe is missing 2 key guys, but nobody else is shutting out Missouri. I know that much. So, I mean, you know what I mean? So I think we go from there. The playoffs.
Oklahoma didn't.
No, absolutely not. That's what I was saying. First of all, shutting anybody out. I did find the end of the game with Brian Kelly being kind of pissed. He's trying to score, and we're trying to stop him. Like, dude, what are you talking about? That is literally what they're supposed to do. And I have a flashback to a memory. Rick Neuheisel, I'm pretty sure, was coaching UCLA, and Pete Carroll, as USC tended to do, was kicking their rear end. I'm pretty sure it was Rick Neuheisel. Well, they were running the game out. And on first down they ran, it was 2nd and 9. Well, second down they blitzed. And then I didn't really understand what was happening until later. Pete Carroll got very animated. He started screaming, things started moving, and on the third down they dropped a bomb on him. And he said, "You blitz, we bomb." It was pretty much that simple. But if you're trying to score, we're trying to stop you, right, Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Brian Kelly came across. I mean, I was really disappointed. I was almost kind of upset about it. I mean, like, what's he talking about? He's got his first team out there. He's trying to score. What does he expect Alabama to do? Here's the end zone, guys. Y'all can have it. The game's over. That's not how football works. Why does he think that's how football works?
It's like some third graders are out there. You're wanting the kids to be able to score and celebrate a little bit.
That's exactly right.
Oranges after the play's over.
I'm just confused as to why he's upset about that. Confused.
Yeah, well, don't forget, he fed into everything thrown on the field by acting crazy about a face mask.
That was a good call, by the way.
I mean,
like, what call.
I'm almost positive that referee had a better view than Brian Kelly. But when he kept going, now fans, I will say, we'll get off on a tangent. They're looking for a reason to throw crap at this stage, right? Yep. They're looking for a reason to, until you hear suspended. Like the Yankees game when that guy did that to Jeter, there's been more problems in the playoffs, right? They threw him out, they banned him. When you start doing stuff, arresting them, there'll be a thing. But Brian's an interesting guy, isn't he, Andrew Bone?
Yeah, I mean, we saw that the moment he walked into Baton Rouge with the accents, the dancing, and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's interesting. 3 losses, for LSU. I mean, they had an early season loss against USC, which everyone assumed USC was back because they beat LSU. And then we've seen their
Moss
season.
Miller for Heisman, right?
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it's been an interesting year for LSU, but glad Alabama was able to go down and right the ship and get that big win.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I like Brian Kelly because he brings a different flavor to his press conferences. He's the only coach in America still throwing his players under the bus and escaping. I mean, it's still like unscathed. He's like, I haven't seen, like, he's old school. Remember when the guy snapped the ball off the holder's chest and he just ripped the holder? And the whole time I was going, how's that the holder's fault? Like, how is that the holder's fault? But I mean, he's an original. Playoffs came out, Jimmy Stein. Let's talk about the SEC standings. We don't want to get into hypotheticals on what could happen. Right. One of our board posters at BamaOnline.com on the roundtable laid out a scenario where Arkansas could go to the SEC championship game. And on a quick fact check, it looked accurate. That's how messed up the SEC is. We wanted it crazy. We've got it crazy, right?
Well, 16 teams in only 8 games. One of my predictions this summer, which is no doubt going to come true, and I really wasn't going out on any sort of a limb, was that tiebreaker system that the SEC didn't invent until like a day before the season started. The tiebreaker would be utilized to determine who's going to Atlanta, and it wasn't because I was some sort of a prophet about how the season was going to play. It was just because there's 16 teams and only 8 games. There were going to be multiple teams, and I didn't see anybody going 8-0 just because the league is so tough. So I'm like, there's going to be multiple 7-1 and 6-2 teams deciding this at the end, and that looks like what's going to happen. And Arkansas winning the league is silly. On the other hand, I'm not going to be shocked, guys, if Arkansas upsets Texas. I won't be shocked. I don't expect it to happen, but I certainly won't be surprised. There's still some crazy results out there to happen. Playing on the road in this league is really tough, no matter what Alabama made it look like Saturday night.
Absolutely. Andrew, you missed the divisions. They used to make it a little bit easier, right? I mean, you have enough talent to divide. You've actually got rivalries to put in each division. You can put Texas against Texas A&M. You can put Bama against Auburn. They can be in different divisions, but would have made it a little bit easier than this 16 car pileup we've got going on.
All people talked about forever was get rid of the divisions, and to get rid of the divisions, you like bring back the divisions, bring back. I mean, it's crazy, but I don't know what they're going to end up doing. But this is it's going to be interesting the rest of the way because there's so many intriguing games, especially this weekend with the Tennessee Georgia game. I mean, I thought I knew. Before last weekend, I was thinking Tennessee's going to get just boat raced in Athens. But after seeing Georgia, they got more problems than what we anticipated, even after their big blowout win against Texas. But I still think they're going to be refocused this weekend and should get it done in Athens. But, man, that Texas A&M game at the end of the season, that's going to be pretty interesting, especially being in College Station.
I'm not sure Georgia's problems are cosmetic or effort-wise. Their offense, I mean, Ole Miss did nothing special in that game. And you got to remember, their only touchdown was a short field on 4th down off a turnover where Jackson Dart, was injured and came back later on. But, Jimmy, I mean, Georgia has issues on the offensive line. They don't seem to have the playmakers they're missing. Their wide receivers don't seem to get separation like we're used to seeing back. Kirby said they don't like bells and whistles. We got a guy driving a Lamborghini. So I think there's a little misconception on what bells and whistles are all. But he doesn't look like the number 1 pick overall, which is, hey, that's another issue. Georgia, whenever they're good, their quarterback is the number 1 pick overall in every preseason mock draft. But they've got some issues. But we all have issues, right? Does anybody not have issues right now?
Well, I mean, I guess some might say Oregon, but, Oregon beat Ohio State by 1 point at home. So, I don't think Oregon's invincible at all. As a matter of fact, to be honest, even though if they win out, they're going to be a strong number 1 seed in the college football playoff if they win out. But I'm not going to personally predict that they win it. I don't think they'll win it.
Boise State gave them what for? I mean, they caught
sure
some
did.
breaks. Yeah. They caught some gains, but I think we're all – go ahead, Jimmy. I'm sorry. We just think we're all kind of all flawed. And any given Saturday, you can be the best or the worst team on that field.
No, a bunch of teams are bunched up. I really think the portal has a lot to do with it, NIL to some degree, but really the portal, I think teams are able to patch, it used to be in the summertime, you could ask a coach, in his most private moments, say, where do you think y'all struggle? And he'll say, well, we're just not really good at inside linebacker. We're not really good at safety. We could use another receiver. That's what they'd say in July. And these days they can fix it, or at least attempt to fix it by going to the portal, even into the summertime. I think teams have just been able to patch problems, and then you got teams like Alabama, Georgia, Texas, who lose a lot of their depth, in the portal. And maybe, hey, they're starting 22s really good, like it's always been, but maybe that player 23 through 50 is playing for somebody else now. I think the portal's created not NFL level parity. We don't have anything like that, but we got more parity than we've ever had before. I really believe it's the portal.
You might, I think maybe it is better than the NFL in some ways, because there's some NFL teams that ain't never going to be good. I mean, there's a reason they draft top 5 every year. The Panthers.
Looking at you, Panthers.
And again, Bryce Young is looking much more like the Bryce that we thought he could be. Still dropping passes. Still not a good football team. The Bears, oh man. So we got some teams that are the Vanderbilt of old, except in college. Vanderbilt's now a very competitive team. Andrew, when you look up, we talk about it any given Saturday. Miami finally got theirs, right? They've dodged that bullet for a whole season. And then Brett Key, the old Alabama native, former Alabama coach, finally got him.
Yeah, 9 lives for Miami this season. I mean, they should have gotten beat by Virginia Tech a few weeks ago, and they get beat by another Tech school, this past week. So, props. I mean, that's 2 out of the last 3 for Brent Key over Mario Cristobal. Yeah, Key been there 2 years, or is this third?
Second, and this is second full year
for Mario,
or for Brent Key.
Brent. No, he's been there. This is at least his 3rd year.
He's gotten 2 on Mario, so that's 2.
Yeah,
the battle of the former Alabama O-line coaches. I mean,
yeah.
And Georgia Tech, had Haynes King was back in that game, so they played well, played hard, and Miami. I don't know. I don't know about this. Tim and I were talking about this last night. We don't know how good this Miami team, really is. They've had a lot of really close games against some bad teams. So I'm intrigued to see. They're going to make the college football playoff. I don't know if they're going to get out of that first round, though.
I'm kind of irritated they didn't play Clemson. I don't know how in the hell that game doesn't get scheduled. Some of the scheduling, and I don't know how they do the scheduling, I'll be honest, but what I do know, Jimmy Stein, when people are saying I don't know how good a team is as far as battle tested, Alabama's probably right up there as battle tested as any successful team in the country this year.
Yeah, strength of schedule is 11, but it's actually, to me, more impressive than that. You haven't played anybody with a losing record. You've played 4 top 25 teams. No one else has played more than 2. And you still have 2. I don't know. It's fair to say that Auburn's tough. I think it's tough for Alabama in the sense that, every Alabama fan knows you're going to get Auburn's best shot, at the end of the year. And that game at Norman, obviously Oklahoma struggled. Alabama's we favored to win, but no one can convince me that going to Norman and winning is easy. It's not going to be easy. They're defensively they're good. Yeah, exactly. It's an SEC environment, and they got dudes. Now, they haven't played well every week, or most weeks they haven't, but defensively they have played well at times. That's safety Bowen. He's unreal. The linebacker Stutzman's a great player. Jackson Arnold is probably going to be good at some point down the road. Who knows when that happens?
Receivers back too.
Yeah,
you
Deion Burks.
Some of their losses, they were missing like their
five. Their top 5 wide receivers and 2 offensive linemen when they beat Auburn, I believe.
So they're getting a little healthier, so it's not going to be just an absolute cakewalk. But Alabama also has. Everybody talks about all these FCS teams that Alabama plays. Playing a 9-1 team.
9-1. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no,
Even Mercer's good.
That's absolutely true. And you can just look at the SEC on the road, the trouble some of these teams have had, and some again. How's that South Carolina win looking now? I mean, that's the thing is, like, if you watch football and you watch a lot of it, you can kind of tell South Carolina was a good team against Alabama, and they've proven they were a good team. Their front seven's just nasty. I think it might be Ole Miss is good, was really good against Georgia, but I think South Carolina has the best front 7 that Alabama has faced. Jimmy Stein, we go to Mercer. You kind of get a week. You want this game to go pretty comfortable, right? You want to see backups. You want to see player rested. But really what you want, and again, we haven't talked about this enough. We did on that postgame show. Bama had 7 penalties, but 2 were on the second team defense on the last drive, I believe. So up until that point, they had 5 timeouts. 5 penalties at LSU, which is a lot of discipline shown.
Yeah. I mean, overall, so many things with Alabama are improving. I think the thing against Mercer, guys, is here's an opportunity to improve. I mean, work on what's the problem. Work on that. Hey, we haven't hit on any deep balls. Let's throw some deep balls if that's something that needs to be worked on. Just have a dress rehearsal type situation, but at the same time, you are playing a competitive football team. Mercer has won, they've played 10 times, they've won 9 times. Mercer's not showing up for the check. The administration is, but the players aren't. The players are showing up trying to prove themselves. You have to win the game, but at the same time, you can work on things. That's what my hope for Alabama is Saturday. Whatever they perceive to be some kinks can be worked out, because the last 2 games will be a challenge of some level or another. So you better be playing your best football this time of the year if you want to get in the playoff and make some noise.
Yeah, I agree. Jimmy, we appreciate you coming on the show as always. Jimmy Stein, you can find him at BamaOnLine.com. He does a lot of message board posts and stories. He does teams. He loves recruiting. He's like me and Andrew in that regard. We love the team and recruiting, so we'll dip our toes in there. But Jimmy, we're going to let you get out of here, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
See y'all next week, guys.
See you, Jimmy. We're going to welcome in. Why are you off center, Joe? Come on.
I've got no clue. Every time I set it up before I get into the show, it
does shift.
Bring me on, yeah.
BOL drug testing starting this afternoon. Joseph's sitting over here like this. Hey, guys, what's going on today? Joseph, welcome to the show. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How about you guys? Everything going well?
I love that we get on here and act like we don't talk all damn day.
Yeah, I was about to say, I know exactly what's going on with you guys. Like everything.
It's like we talk all day. We go here like, hey, Joseph, what's been happening in your world? Anyways, let's get into it a little bit. We got recruiting. We got a lot of news this time of year, a lot of rumors this time of year. Let's talk a little bit about Caleb Cunningham, the Mississippi wide receiver, obviously in the middle of the Alabama game. Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons flipped their RPM, their version of our version of a crystal ball pick, to Ole Miss. Ole Miss feels they can keep him at home. Andrew, super surprising to you? I mean, the guy took he's been a frequent visitor this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's taken 3 visits to Ole Miss. Now, he's also taken some other visits. I mean, he hasn't just been to Ole Miss, been to Mississippi State, been to Auburn, been to
LSU,
and been to Alabama. So he has enjoyed the process thoroughly from start to almost the finish line. I mean, every single time he took a visit here in the spring, and even the official visits came out of those trips naming that school as his leader pretty much. So, not necessarily surprised that after 3 trips to Oxford, including the last one where fans are rushing the field and he's signing autographs and everybody's trying to tell him, why he should stay home and all this kind of stuff, I'm not really surprised that the predictions rolled in. So I think the biggest thing is he hasn't committed. He hasn't flipped. He's still committed to Alabama, still intends on visiting Tuscaloosa for the Iron Bowl. So I think as long as that still happens, as long as he still gets back to Alabama, before that early signing period. Now, there's obviously some talk about he might wait until February to sign. I don't necessarily buy that. I think he's going to sign in December. I think if he's going to flip, he's going to flip. But I think if he's going to stick, he's going to stick. And I think it's all going to happen sometime in December.
I loved how profound you were right there. If he sticks, he sticks. If he flips, he flips. I'm writing. Hold on, I'm writing this down for future use. Yeah, he's killing it. It's the hat. The hat makes him that much smarter. No, I'm just kidding. But here's the thing: is like we keep saying on the round table, the BamaOnLine message board. If he's not certain he wants to be somewhere, this is no longer 1982 where it's hard to leave. Julian Sayin signed in February, left in January. Now, I know that was a coaching change, but there's plenty of windows to leave a school. So if he's not sure, you want these guys to be sure. The one thing this staff is very similar to with Nick Saban is they want the guys here that want to be here. Nick Saban was always on that. this staff, we hear our sources tell us that numerous times. And Joseph, they've got a guy coming in this weekend, very interesting prospect. Watched his film, and I mean the term smooth operator came to mind because he's just a smooth joker when he runs.
Yeah, Nashawn Montgomery out of South Florida. He's actually somebody that popped up on my radar well over a year ago. Julian Sain was throwing to him for Miami Raw, the 7v7 team. I got to see a little bit of Nashawn and, received an offer from Alabama back in January, visited a couple of times in the spring. Obviously, Alabama got Latsier Brooks back in April and then made that heavy push for Caleb Cunningham and landed him in July. But Montgomery says that contact has always been there with Alabama throughout the year. Jamarcus Shepard is somebody that he's been maintaining communication with. He received a visit at his school from Courtney Morgan a few weeks ago. So things have been steady with Alabama, but obviously with everything going on with Cunningham, Alabama's going to bring him in for an official visit this weekend. And, just interested to see how things go there in terms of whether that pursuit is picked up or not. But he's committed to Florida right now, says that Billy Napier is the main reason why. And Billy, being retained by Florida, that announcement coming last week, is keeping them solid with them. So we'll see how things kind of play out in the next few weeks, but particularly this weekend with that visit.
I think with wide receiver, and again, reminding the fans, Alabama only wanted 2 wide receivers. When you're worried about your wide receiver room, you're not signing 2 of anything unless it's a punter or a long snapper or a place kicker. You're not signing. You're signing in bulk. Worried about the offensive line, we're getting 5. So I think the wide receiver room, and also I'll tell you, I think you both will agree here. If you want a guy in the portal from any level of college football, you can find him at wide receiver because that's a skill position, it's athletes, and they're all over the country, Andrew.
Yeah, I talked about this the other day on the roundtable about, there are a lot of really good wide receivers. Not only, you find receivers in high school, you find them in the portal, you find them in junior college. You can go get a wide receiver from somewhere if you really need one. Like you said, Alabama wants 2 wide receivers in this class. They've got 2 right now. Caleb's flirting a little bit with probably not flirting a little bit, flirting a lot with Ole Miss and some of these other schools. But they're bringing in Nashawn Montgomery this weekend. Kind of fill him out. See if they're going to make a big push. And I think that even if they don't know an answer on Caleb Cunningham, they still can make a decision here. There's a spot that they can make some room. So we'll see what they do with Nashawn Montgomery this weekend, or if they decide, hey, we're going to wait and look maybe a little bit in the portal. But Alabama recruited really well in that 2024 recruiting class at the wide receiver position. You got to think, Ryan Williams was supposed to be in this 2025 recruiting class, but he came in a little bit early, and they've got some, they've got some really good underclassmen at the position.
Similar positions, running back, where you've got Anthony Turbo Rogers committed to Montgomery, committed to the former staff. I would say probably lean into not going to be in this class. I think you guys are with me on that. But we do have an interesting target coming in. And again, this is a guy, Jace Clarizio, which is an unbelievably cool name in a lot of ways. But we've got him coming in for an official visit this week, and he's a guy, again, no senior film. That's one thing we're seeing with this guy. I jumped in his game film. Big guy, runs, very productive, good stats and everything. More of a natural running back. The thing with Turbo, Joseph, is we're not really sure where he projects, but that doesn't mean he can project. He could be special teams. I even think there's a chance at nickelback if he wanted to, but also slot wide receiver. But Jace more of a pure running back.
Yeah, with Turbo, it's interesting because you look at his stats this year, they're mainly receiver stats. I think double the receiving yards than he has rushing yards. Gets a lot of time out there in the slot, makes a lot of plays there. Like you mentioned, special teams too. He's a little bit smaller in stature. I got to meet him last year. He is that, around that 5'8", 5'9" range. Definitely plays bigger than that size, but he is smaller for sure. Meanwhile, with Jace, you have Bone did a great story there, so I'll let him talk a little bit more about the background there. But his production this season has been exceptional. So some really great highlight plays that he's put forward. Not a ton of film out there on him right now that we've been able to find, but the production has been there, and Alabama has taken some interest. Obviously there's a little bit of that connection with Coach Kapilovich, back at his Michigan State days, but bringing him in for an official visit this weekend. He also got another another running back out there. Harry Dalton committed to USC. So it really interested to see how things play out with the running back position this cycle.
Andrew, tell us about your interview with Jace. Some of the takeaways from it.
Yeah, so we've got a great story with Jace on BOL, talking about his entire recruiting process, pretty much from the start of when Coach Cap extended him an offer at Michigan State last fall. So that relationship kind of stemmed from almost a year now. I think that the biggest takeaway was he grew up an Alabama fan and a Michigan State fan. He lives in East Lansing. His father played at Michigan State, was a backup running back back in the mid to late 80s. But I don't think that's necessarily holding him down. I think, he was blown away when Alabama extended that offer. Talked to Robert Gillespie, Alabama's running backs coach, who's been there for a while, and told him, hey, you have some of the best film that I've seen in the entire country. We feel like you've got a chance to play here. We want to get you down here, meet everybody, and he's going to be down this weekend. I mean, that offer happened last Wednesday, and he set up an official visit pretty quickly. So he'll be in Tuscaloosa this weekend for an official visit. He's around 5'11", 195. He says 195 pounds. I think his profile page says 185, but that was probably entered last year. So he says he's 195. We'll get an accurate height and measurement this weekend when he makes it to Tuscaloosa. But very intriguing prospect because Alabama does have one running back commitment in A.K. Deere, number 2 back in the country who considers himself solid, not taking any other visits. And then Anthony Rogers, who, as we see, probably on his way out. So what's going to happen between, these next 3-4 weeks between Jace and potentially Harry Dalton, who's a USC commitment, potentially coming back in later this month. So I think it does come down to one of those two guys.
Pretty interesting. I can think of another former Alabama running back whose dad played at Michigan State, and that prep player played in Michigan. Pop quiz, Joseph, who are we talking about?
Mark Ingram.
Mark Ingram, attaboy.
Yeah, I read Bone Stories.
Attaboy.
See,
attaboy.
I
He
knew
doesn't
somebody
read.
on this feed reads my
Nobody reads it. Joseph does not read those stories. But yes, Mark Ingram, very similar. His father played at Michigan State, and Mark played high school prep ball in Michigan. And of course, we're not saying he's Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram's hollowed ground.
and was a late offer.
It was a late offer. Track guy. Let's talk a little bit about Keelan Russell. I feel like we don't. I mean, there's guys we don't talk about enough. I feel it sometimes. Keelan, do we talk about him enough?
I don't think so, no.
I mean, we tweet about him and we watch his game to talk about him as a player, but his impact on this class, again, kick-started the June commitment, just domino after that. A guy that's been very consistent and has locked it down. Andrew, what does that mean for the class when you get your quarterback? And you've seen a lot of other quarterbacks now. We got Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons predicting Juju is going to flip to Colorado. We got Deuce Knight, who's committed to Auburn, who's committed to Notre Dame, going to Ole Miss, wearing all Ole Miss gear. So a little bit refreshing to have the quarterback locked in, saying he's locked in, and then actually not taking other visits. Andrew Bowe?
I think the biggest fear for Alabama. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, unfortunately. We can. You're a little blurry, but we're used to that. Go ahead.
Oh, you froze on that. Yeah, I think the biggest fear for Alabama. I think during the summer when he first committed, and then all of a sudden he goes out to the Elite 11, dominates the Elite 11, dominates every 7-on-7 camp he went to, and was clearly one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the country going into the season. Where other school is going to really press hard and try to get him to visit. Obviously, they did, but he shut it down. Colorado made a big run at Keelan, but now they've made their big run at Juju instead after missing out on Keelan. So getting him locked in and loaded, he's been a big recruiter behind the scenes for Alabama. I mean, he even got a kid during the summer, Kalik Lockett, who had never visited Alabama before. There was not really much communication there. But after he committed, Kalik Lockett immediately took an official visit to Alabama, at Alabama in his top 2. I mean, that's the type of impact that Keelan Russell has had. But he's been, great as far as building relationships with a lot of these, guys in the class. And I think, he's going to be an even bigger part of Alabama recruiting moving forward. You can imagine next year. Think about this class. There's 2 wide receiver commitments. Caleb's flirting around, but next year when you start having a lot more wide receivers visit the campus, and when you are trying to sign 3 or 4 wide receivers in next year's recruiting class, you got a guy like Keelan Russell who's there as a freshman that's going to be recruiting you. I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah, Joseph, let's talk a little bit. Let's swing over to the offensive linemen as a group, a collective group. I still think the best in the nation, one of the best I've ever seen, again, on paper. I think we don't talk about Micah DeBose, who's an upside guy, enough. Mal Waldrop, there's been a history of guys that we don't talk about enough on the offensive line. Andrew, jumps to mind is Bradley Bozeman, who was an afterthought, literally an afterthought in his recruitment because he was close with Reuben Foster. We just assumed it was the calf and the cow, bring the guy that's connected him to another one. But, Bozeman's a guy very similar to Waldrop, except bigger. William Vallejos is another. But Joseph, overall, this offensive line, just the impact it can have, not just now, but in the future.
Yeah, I really like that you brought up Waldrop there. He's 6'5.5", 325 pounds, plays tackle right now for Central High School in Phoenix City, but projected to play center down the line, says that he's going to train at guard. So he's got some position versatility, which is what you look for in an offensive lineman. Micah DeBose, like you mentioned too. With Micah, the biggest question has just been about, the conditioning aspect, getting himself into playing shape, playing weight. Seems like he's doing well at Theodore this season. And I had a chance to visit Michael Carroll, 5-star offensive lineman at IMG Academy. And he's got the prototypical size that you're looking for too, and he's got surprisingly some speed there, as we saw in the clip where I tried to defend him as a defensive back. He's pretty athletic. And Jackson Lloyd too, who's playing along the defensive line this season at Carmel High School. Ty Haywood, got to see him earlier this season. Really strong tackle projection. Has great technique, great size. Everything just kind of lined up perfectly for Alabama with the offensive line group, and it started with Keelan Russell's commitment. The dominoes started to fall with the offensive line group from there on, ending with Ty Haywood on July 14th. Just an exceptional job from Coach Cap and Coach Morgan too, former offensive lineman at Michigan. The players really respect him, think highly of him. So this is the top offensive line group in the country for sure.
So here we are. Tomorrow's 3 days till signing day.
3 weeks. 3 weeks. Whew.
3 weeks. First post will be the first signing day without Nick Saban. We're here at number 1 in the class right now, and obviously a lot to go on. And I can't stress this enough. 3 weeks is not the end of recruiting by any stretch of the imagination. At best, it's halftime. At worst, it's the first intermission of an opera in New York City where you get 2 intermissions. But you got this early signing period where you want to put this group together. And no matter what, you still got a late signing period. And there'll be guys that drift out there and guys you want to chase. We've seen who all? Keon Keeley, James Smith, Quade Rousseau. We've seen some guys that went into the late period for different reasons. And you got multiple portal windows. But, Andrew, where we stand right now, where Alabama puts
number one class in the country heading into the 3rd week. I mean, I think we were all kind of in agreement, back in August, it's going to be hard to hold on to the number 1 class throughout the entire year. And the player rankings kind of changed mid-season, and that really kind of pushed Alabama to the top because there were some other sites that updated their rankings because they were behind on a lot of guys. Jackson Lloyd, Ty Haywood. I mean, a lot of those rankings were
Keon Keeley.
Keon Keeley,
Keon Keeley, yeah.
Wait, you mean Keelan Russell?
Keelan Russell, yeah, Keon Keeley. They were behind on him too. They were behind on him too at one point. But
a lot of people are kind of catching up. So Alabama's holding that top spot. It's going to be hard to hold it if you lose a guy like Caleb Cunningham, but there's still some big targets out there on, not only on defense, because that's kind of the main focus, but we're still looking at some offensive guys that are out there as well. So it's going to be an interesting 3 weeks to see how it, finally ends. But can Alabama completely hold it together? I think Cunningham's the only guy that's, really concerning right now. But
boy, you'll jinx it in a minute, won't you?
I don't care.
Me and Joseph are like,
it is what it is.
Whoa, Andrew. It is what, hey, you're full of them today. It is what it is. The one thing, Andrew, I'm sorry, I meant to mention earlier was there's not just flips away, there's possible flips in. Ivan Taylor We had a RPM. Both of the guys put RPM prediction in. I put our BOL prediction in. Ivan Taylor, a top 60 safety in the country. And that's the thing about recruiting, right? You might lose some, but you might get some. And at the end of the day, Joseph, aren't you just happy with who you got?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the stories that we do where a kid is 100% locked in, like a Justin Hill, or we talk about AK Deer. They don't get nearly the traction as a Caleb Cunningham visiting Ole Miss and receiving predictions elsewhere. On the night where Alabama went into LSU, possibly had, I think obviously the Georgia Texas game may be there for UGA or even Alabama Georgia. Possibly the most impressive performance in the SEC this season, just what they did start to finish, kind of in a do or die game for both of those teams. And the focus is on a potential Caleb Cunningham flip. He didn't flip, a potential flip. There was a ton of talk about that, but look at all the guys that are in this class. And, even if Caleb does decide to depart, it's still an incredible, sensational class all around, top to bottom, every single position that they've been able to recruit at. Especially in the first year with Kalen DeBoer and company. You think about, not for me, it's it's about the class that they're signing now, but it's about what this means for the future. You talk about Keelan Russell, who's built relationships with Cedarian Morgan, a priority in-state target in the 2026 class. Christian Robinson, how well he's shown recruiting the Wolf position, and what that means for a 2026 group. I talked with Anthony Tank Jones about him this week, posted a story on BOL about how much Robinson means in his recruitment. So this class is just incredible, even if you lose somebody like a Caleb Cunningham.
Yeah, I think at this stage, again, you have to worry about who's coming. It's almost like the Jerry Maguire scene, who's coming with me. You kind of want to know who's coming with you. In Alabama, again, I mean, it's easy. You got to worry about who wants to be here. Again, in the portal, you can bounce at any moment. But it also helps when you have a class that's highly rated. And again, as we've discussed, the difference between 1, 2, and 3 are going to be thin. But the one thing I like about this class is it's very complete. You got a lot of guys that impact in the areas you want. It's not surprising to see it literally have an offensive unit that can run out on the field together. You have an exact offensive unit can run out on the field. It's not surprising, is it, with Kalen DeBoer being an offensive-minded guy, Nick Sheridan, a fired-up Nick Sheridan Saturday. We've went from coaches that they're too relaxed, they're giving ice cream and wearing their hoodies, to they'll get in your butt a little bit, won't they, Andrew?
Yeah, I love seeing some of the reactions from Coach DeBoer on the sidelines these last few weeks. I mean, he's got a little animated out there, which you like to see. I mean, I love his personality off the field. I mean, I think it's been great. I think it's been great for the program. I think it's been great for the players. People want to see a little bit more fire. I get that, but man, he tore some guys up on Saturday night.
Yeah, the thing about it is, that's what I'd say is, like, just like my mom would never show she's about to beat me to death in public. And I was a bad kid. I missed, I only got about 20% of the spankings I needed. She smiles and happy. We got back to the house, gets game on, headlock city. So I think everybody doesn't handle it out on the front. I mean, look, Kirby Smart, said what we were all thinking. Jake Pope's an idiot, and he's been called it stupid and an idiot, and he's taken a lot of credit for that, a lot of heat for that. So I think maybe the Bama staff, you can appreciate a little bit more about handling things behind closed door, because Andrew, Justin, we've heard the whole time, they weren't all playing ukuleles like two in that locker room after games, and when they made mistakes, there was some tough love there. Joseph, give us a final thought on the recruiting class.
Yeah, kind of going off that last point where you're talking about there, the will resolve of this team, it's shown in that game against LSU. If this was a team that really truly didn't care, they would have gone out there and laid an egg and been ready for next season. This team's got a lot of fight in it, and I don't think their mentality character should be questioned going forward. With the recruiting class, there's just so much to like, top to bottom, like we mentioned before. But Keelan Russell stating that his recruitment shut down last week, telling BOL that, just huge. Especially when you heard the school like a Colorado or Ole Miss is still trying to get a quarterback in this 2025 class. It's huge to hear that he's locked in, he's focused on the playoffs, and he's ready to do some recruiting once he gets on campus. I'm also looking forward. I know you asked for one final thought. I'm also looking forward to the All-Star games. Latair Brooks got that All-American Bowl invitation. Keelan's invited to the Under Armour game in Orlando. He's going to be playing there. So is AK Deer. So looking forward to seeing these guys against some of the other top prospects in the country in early January.
Yeah, and we don't talk about Lightyear enough, do we, Andrew Bone? This staff is very high on this guy. And the one thing about Lightyear Brooks, this will be my final thought, is he brings a different dimension to what they have on campus. Caleb's a classic wide receiver used to. Lightyear brings a lot of different angles, that stuff you can do with him. Andrew, give us your final thought before we get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, we're 22 days away from the start of the early signing period, which is amazing. I'm intrigued to kind of see how it all plays out, especially in the defensive backfield. I mean, we've made that prediction with Ivan Taylor to flip his commitment from Michigan to Alabama. So we'll see how that plays out. But cornerback's going to be interesting because Alabama still wants to add one more corner. They've got Donovan Starr, who's committed to Auburn, taking an official visit to Georgia this weekend. Got Mason Dunn, committed to Ole Miss. Alabama's still heavily recruiting him. How that's going to kind of play out, it's going to be interesting. Defensive line, does Justice Terry get back to Tuscaloosa one more time before signing day? Seems like Georgia's in a pretty good spot there. But if Alabama can get him on campus, you never know what might happen. But overall, great recruiting class, great first year for Alabama, and we'll see how it all plays out.
All right. Thanks for everybody tuning in for the BamaOnLine Big Show. We'll probably hopefully have, maybe it's possible, we'll have a recruiting show depending on the news. I mean, we're getting to that point at the end of the week where news can be breaking, but you can find us on the BamaOnLine Roundtable where we're frequently dropping stories, message board posts, sharing everything from Andrew's grill to Joseph's latest Spider-Man costume. We talk about it all. Thanks for joining, and you guys please say goodbye so you're not mad at me later. Andrew?
All right. Thanks for watching. We'll see you at BOL.
Thank you all for watching. Join BOL.com and see you on the roundtable.